Since the 20th century, we've been blessed with loud exhausts and roaring engines in our vehicles at the cost of our environment. Now it's time to face the consequences and think for the future generations. Gas combustion vehicles have been around for centuries at the cost of the climate and also the human population. With this in mind, we need to seek alternative ways of driving to lower CO2 emissions. In the following sequences, I'm going to explain how the CO2 affects the environment and how actually EVs or electrical vehicle motors will drastically lower CO2 emissions. Since the introduction of gas combustion vehicles came with complications of emitting harmful gases towards our planet. As stated by Peter Orszag, a former director of U.S. Office of Management and Budget, he states that when vehicles emit CO2 into the atmosphere, is actually trapped in the atmosphere, which allows it to warm up the planet in a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Explaining this phenomenon, I have James Sharon, a climate scientist at Columbia University Earth Observatory, and he helps by giving an example of oxygen. Oxygen does not stay trapped in the atmosphere, rather, it can escape through the atmosphere. The reason being is because oxygen is a one atom particle, and the one atom particle allows it to react with varieties of wavelengths. In this instance, we're talking about the sunlight, and the reason being is because instead of absorbing the sunlight, it actually reacts with it, thus allowing it to escape the atmosphere. In regards to the greenhouse effect, we have CO2 or carbon dioxide, and it is actually a 3-atom particle, which makes it denser, and instead of reacting with the sunlight or the wavelength, it actually absorbs it, which allows it to stay within the atmosphere, warming up the planet. CO2 emission has been shown to affect not only the environment, but also the human population's health as well. When it comes to high CO2 emission in plants, however, it's been shown to affect their growth and their expansion towards resources. With the CO2 trapped and warming up the planet, we've seen an increase of temperature, which extends the plant's growing season, and also increases the humidity, as stated by Paul Przerbowski, a NASA webmaster. In return, due to this extended growing season, it puts stress on the plant and the natural selection state to survive and fend off for more resources to survive in this humidity and also growth extended season. CO2 has been linked to human health problems when exposed. As stated by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, exposure to any levels of CO2 have been linked to hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and convulsions, just to name a few. Also stated by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services is that there are levels to CO2, and each are linked to different health problems depending on which areas you're affected in. Knowing the effects of CO2 emissions, there has to be a solution and efforts to lower CO2 emissions overall. At an attempt to lower CO2 emissions, we have companies and products producing EVs or electrical vehicle motors in efforts to lower CO2 emissions. EVs have no need for gas combustion vehicles. With gas combustion vehicles, you need to emit CO2, whereas EVs there's no need for. With this in mind, we decrease the usage of fossil fuels, which reluctantly lowers the CO2 emissions. If we were to lower CO2 emission, it allows us to improve human health in high areas of CO2. According to Zara Adams, a researcher of the medicine of the USC, there has been correlation with EVs lowering CO2 emissions. In her research, they found that for every 20 electrical vehicle motors per 1,000 people has been shown a 3.2% drop in asthma-related emergencies in a zip code area. It could be well noted that if more gas combustion vehicles were replaced by EVs, it could be beneficial for not only for the human health, but also for the environmental health. In regards to vehicle sector, we've seen great efforts to lower emissions with the help of the EV in order to help the environmental health and also the human health. In conclusion, we have CO2 that is denser than most particles, which allows it to absorb energy like the sunlight, emitting it to be trapped in the atmosphere. With it being trapped in the atmosphere, it allows it to increase in temperature, affecting not only the environment, but also the human health, as I such stated. With this being in mind, there has to be great purpose to lower emission, and EV can drastically help that. With the introduction of combustion gas vehicle, it yielded negative harmful gases towards our planet, which affects both the planet and also the human health. As a last thought, although we will never hear engine and exhaust in the near future, it'd be for a good reason because it'd be helping not only the human health but also the environment we live in.